Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming. We will start on top of the hour. In the meantime, I shared in the chat the lab website, and if you want to check it out, and I'm pinning now the paper. So if you want to start looking at it, feel free to do so. And we will start in around 5 minutes. Thank you so much. And yeah, if you think this is interesting for people that you know, feel free to share the room. I think it's a really interesting and important topic, mental health. So, yeah, thank you for your support.
Remember what the first forest kind of was for you, and what was the second?
Hi,
To somehow
Sonia.
get at, did they grasp the
Are you?
biodiversity difference or the density difference?
Hey, Sonia. How are you? Good morning. We still have a few minutes. So yeah, we'll start shortly. Thank you for coming. Do you see the mute? The mute button is all the way on the bottom right hand. There's a little microphone button, so to mute and unmute, you click on that, and then we can hear you. Can you hear us? Sonia, can you hear me? We'll start in a couple minutes. In the meantime, I'll put the paper up, and shortly I will switch to the PowerPoint presentation for this talk. So after the introduction, I will switch to that. Hi, LT. How are you? You want to come up to the stage? Oh, thank you, LT. Hi, Abdo. How are you today? Feel free to share the room if you think that this topic is interesting for people you know. I'm sharing it on Twitter right now. And We will start in a minute. I just want to check. Sonia, can you hear us? We cannot hear you, so if you press on the microphone button, you're unmuted, and then we can hear you.
Hello, Katarina. Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. How are you?
Sorry, I was in another meeting, so I just finished now.
Okay. I was wondering because when you came in, it's so weird. You're unmuted. Like people are unmuted when they come onto the stage, so it's kind of.
Yeah. Sorry about that. It was just ended now. It's like a bit busy schedule, but yeah. Can I just have a second to grab a glass of?
Oh yeah. Don't worry. We have time. Don't worry. No rush. Just come back and take a break for a minute. I'll share on Twitter and so that we're starting. So no worries. Hey everyone, we will start shortly. And in the meantime, if you have questions, or you can check out the paper on top that's pinned on top, or if you would like to share this. I feel like this topic is important for a lot of people because it's mental health related. So feel free to share it, or check out the lab website that I shared in the chat, or the paper, because shortly we will switch to the PowerPoint presentation when Sonia will start to talk. So thank you for coming, and we are looking forward to this discussion.
Hi, here I am.
Perfect. Well, first of all, thank you for coming and going through the trouble to make a Clubhouse account and all these things. So we really appreciate it.
No
And
worries.
and I'll give first a short introduction, and then we'll go from there. So Sonia Sudimac, she is a fellow of the International Max Planck Research School and on the life course, and she did her bachelor in psychology at the University of Belgrade, and in 2016 she did her master's in educational psychology also at the University of Belgrade, and her master's in cognitive science at the Technische Universität Kaiserslautern. And as I said, now she is at the Max Planck Institute. And her main research interest is on how the environment shapes the human brain, and more specifically, how the human brain changes when it's being more exposed to nature versus urban environment, and stress, emotions, and other cognitive processes. She's very interested in the neural mechanisms that are underlie these effects, and as well as in the physiological processes during exposure of different environments. She will talk all about this. And before we start with talking about your really interesting and I think really important research, we usually ask a couple of interview questions, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so how did you become a scientist? Was it something that you always wanted to do, or did you maybe read a book? Was it a class or something that happened in your life that kind of sparked your interest to become a scientist?
Okay, cool. That's really interesting question. Well, to be honest, I was not really one of these kids like that always wanted to become scientists. I know some people who really wanted to become scientists from like very, very early age. But not really in my case. I wanted to become actress. That didn't happen. But I wanted to study psychology. I always found interesting both psychotherapy and generally how our mind works, how our brain works. This is the reason why I started studying psychology. But not really. I didn't mean to go into research, as you just said. Also in my biography, you could see that I did this master in educational psychology. So I was more kind of wanted to focus on education. But then I realized that it's if you want to do educational psychology to change something in your country. I come from Serbia, by the way, not from Germany. That's really difficult. So somehow I decided that I would like to go more into cognitive research, like science and neuroscience, because I realized if I wanted to do science, that would be neuroscience. And then I applied for a German DAD scholarship, and then I got to Germany, and then I studied master in cognitive science. But from the very beginning, I focused more to cognitive neuroscience. This is something what I was interested in, and then I had the opportunity to do the internship in Max Planck in Leipzig, which is Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences, yeah. And I learned the fMRI methodology, so magnetic resonance imaging, and I really like that because you could really see in the brain, structure of the brain, what is happening in the brain during certain tasks. So I learned that methodology and somehow thought that if I continue to work in science and pursue my PhD, that would be something in neuroscience and with this methodology. And then I got to hear about this Lisa Meitner group for environmental neuroscience, which I'm now a member of in Max Planck in Berlin. And then I applied and I got this PhD. So it was not really some sort of idea I want to become scientist necessarily, but somehow searching for a field within psychology that I found interesting. So along this way, I at the end I ended up liking research and statistics and so on, which was not so in the very beginning of my studies. And I like it now. I think it's really interesting field, both neuroscience and environmental psychology, environmental neuroscience. So yeah, I think it's a good choice, but it was more where the kind of path invited me to come. Yeah.
That's great. I think it's really important to just have the mindset we have to do what we have to, or learn what we have to learn to kind of solve the quests or the questions we have. Like to not be,
Yeah.
it's a good approach, not be stuck in the type of work we want to do
Yeah.
to get there, but we just adapt to what we need to learn to solve the stuff that we want to solve. So I think that's a great way, and that way you probably will for sure learn a lot of different methods, and I think it's a great way to do it. So congratulations to those choices, and it worked out really well, right? You had the Max Planck, so that's wonderful. And is there maybe like a backstory to this project and this specific field with, you know, stress, amygdala, and nature? Like, what drove you to choose this specific field and project? And is there maybe a background story? Was it really easy to get funding for it, or to get, that people want to support this project or not? Or, is there some story? Was there something really surprising um, during this research that came up? Thank you.
Um, yeah, this is also a cool question because I mean, this field is practically new. I think we are the only group called really environmental neuroscience. So practically, I've never heard about this field before I applied for this position. And actually, with like when I started working on my PhD, it's when the group started. So yeah, I mean, I heard about it just because I found it online and I wanted to, it looked really cool. And why I actually applied for it was because I just thought it's really crazy study. So when I had an interview with my supervisor, she was saying to me that she has in mind to do this study where people go to forest or to urban environment. We scanned them before and after. And I just thought it's so groundbreaking. Like nobody does this thing. You're normally when you work in psychology or neuroscience research, you have really controlled environment in which you do your tasks and so on. So I thought it's not even, I don't know, something scientific because there's so many things you can't control when people go for 1 hour walk and come back and everything. But that's why I thought it's like super crazy. I just also thought it's super fun to do it. And this is kind of, yeah, this really got my attention. This specific study that she was talking about, it was not detailed, but she had it in her mind with other studies. And it's true, it was received like something very weird and fun because whenever I was presenting this before we had the data, people were like, "What? You drive people with taxis to call it Grunewald Forest and to Schlossstraße, like this street? This is so weird. Like nobody has done this, and then especially not with the scanner. So I thought it's really interesting, and it's just we don't know almost anything about a relationship between environment and brain, and I just thought it's super exciting to start working on something where we don't know practically anything about. um, so that's kind of the story behind how I chose this field or this project. And this kind of group came to be because my supervisor, she was working, her name is Simone Kuhn, Professor Simone Kuhn, and she was working mostly with plasticity. She's famous plasticity researcher. And then she realized that actually when she does intervention studies, for example, providing stationary bike to people to exercise or different intervention, when she measured brain plasticity, she realized that when she removes the intervention and she stops people paying the people, they just stop doing this intervention. So she realized that if you want to somehow enhance brain plasticity or increase well-being in people, it makes more sense to change their environment, right? Because they're all the time within their environment. So if we want to change something, maybe it makes more sense to construct certain environments in a way that are optimal for us instead of doing short interventions which just stops working when the study is done. So then she started to be interested more into environment and then environmental neuroscience, and it resulted that really in the literature there is not so much about the relationship between environment and brain. And then she actually applied to fund to start this environmental neuroscience, and it's called Lisa Meitner Group for Environmental Neuroscience because Lisa Meitner is a famous German researcher who was not that kind of famous in her own time. And then this is a group that promotes female researchers, and so the leaders can only be women. So I think it's also good way to promote women in science as PIs, as leaders.
Wow, that's wonderful. That sounds like a really great place to be, and it's a really exciting field. Like I see so many like future applications and collaborations for you and the group you're in, like maybe collaborating with architects, with
Yeah.
engineers, like um, urban engineers and so on. So I think it's exciting that your group exists, and I hope a lot of people will ask for your expertise in the future to build like healthier cities and environments. But I don't want to take the discussion away now. So I will switch now, everyone, to the PowerPoint presentation, or the PDF presentation. And then I'll put the paper link then in the chat. So I'm doing that right now. So there should be now the presentation. So the stage is yours, Sonia. Thank you so much. And yeah, we're excited to learn from you. Thank you.
Cool. Then I'll start. Okay. So I hope you all access the presentation until now, so I can just start, right, Katerina?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. So hi everyone. Thank you for being here today and for having interest in this research. I think it's really exciting, really new. I thought to just give a bit of a background of what is environmental neuroscience, what is its aim, and also to talk a bit about my project in this paper that was published recently in molecular psychiatry. And at the end, I'll just mention the other project also that I'm working with in my thesis. I'm Sonia Sudimac. I am a part of Lisa Meitner Group for Environmental Neuroscience, as I said, within Max Planck Institute for Human Development in Berlin. And I will talk about my project, how nature nurtures. Amygdala activity decreases as the result of a 1 hour walk in nature. So I would like to start, if you switch to slide number 1, just showing you this figure in order to kind of introduce what is our aim. So why are we doing this research? So in this figure, you can see that already now more than half of the world population lives in cities. And this trend is going to continue in following years. So for this reason, it's really crucial to rethink what kind of urban environments we want to have in future and what kind of urban environments are optimal for our mental health and well-being. And why is this important? Environment has to do a lot with mental health. And as you can see in the slide too, in urban environments, mental disorders such as mood and anxiety disorders, major depression, schizophrenia are up to 56% more common in urban than in rural environments. Especially schizophrenia, because urban upbringing is the most important environmental factor for developing schizophrenia. And some authors even claim that there is a causal relationship between environment and schizophrenia, because it has been shown that when people with schizophrenia move to rural areas, their actually symptoms decrease. On the other hand, when we spend only 1 hour in natural environments, it has been shown that this improves our working memory capacity and restore attention. And also, natural environments have been shown to improve mood and reduce stress. And this is the case not only with perceived sensations and the behavioral measures, but also with physiological indicators. So it has been shown that spending 1 hour in nature also decreases heart rate, blood pressure, and stress hormone cortisol, all of these being physiological indicators of stress. And you might wonder why. So, why is this the case? So what is so magical in nature that makes us feel so good and make us want to see nature and go in nature, listen to birds, etc. So, on slide 4, I listed some like two most famous theories. There are more of them. Actually trying to discuss why is this the case. So everything starts with this biophilia hypothesis. Maybe some of you have heard of, posited by Wilson. And biophilia hypothesis says that humans have an innate tendency to see connections with nature and other forms of life. In other words, since we came evolutionary from nature, we want to go back to nature, and whenever we do, we feel good. So our stress decreases and our attention is restored, right? And then attention restoration theory by Kaplan's posits that nature can recharge our cognition by capturing our involuntary attention, allowing our voluntary attention to restore. So, what is involuntary and voluntary attention? So, for example, when you work or study and you're using your voluntary attention, like working memory, etc., and after, like at the end of the day, you feel already tired, so your voluntary attention decreases. And when you go for a walk in nature, then nature captures your involuntary attention, and during that time, your voluntary attention is restored. So, why is this happening? So, why is nature capturing this involuntary attention? They say, Kaplan and Gamplan, that this is because some environments, including nature, they are provoking so-called soft fascination, meaning that, for example, when you look to the trees or to greenery or to river, we're fascinated by it, but in a soft way, so we're not overwhelmed and we don't need to force our attention, like to pay attention on it, but our involuntary attention just go to birds and greenery and trees, etc. So while our involuntary attention is there, occupied with nature, our actually voluntary attention can restore. And that is why they claim that our attention improves in nature. And since our attention improves, that's why our stress decreases. On the other hand, there is also stress reduction theory by Ulrich, who says that there is quick positive emotional response to nature, right? So as soon as we are in nature, we automatically feel better, our mood is better because humans evolved in nature and we just perceive it as less tense and less complex in urban environment, and we're just automatically feeling better in there. So this theory is also related to biophilia, and this it's a psychoevolutionary theory because again it states that we kind of want to go back in nature. And according to this theory, our stress automatically decreases when we are in nature, and that's why our attention improves. So these theories are not necessarily opposite, but they're complementary theories. It is just that attention restoration theory focuses on attention and stress reduction theory on stress, and different research try to kind of focus to their research in the realm of one of these theories. So, as I have mentioned before, there are many studies trying to understand the relationship between environment and behavior within environmental psychology, and we know that nature, for example, is beneficial for our mental health, for our stress, for our attention. However, we still don't know much, as shown here on slide 6, is what are the neural mechanisms behind this link, right? Like, why are we actually feeling better after going to nature? What is happening in our brains? And this is where environmental neuroscience comes into play, right? It tries to understand what are the neural correlates and mechanisms behind these effects. And apart from that, environmental neuroscience is also trying to answer questions in the realm of one of these theories. So if we want to focus more on stress reduction theory, we can focus more on brain regions related to stress, or to attention restoration theory, we can focus more on brain regions that are related to attention and cognition. On the slide 7, sorry, you can see I will mention some of the research that has been done so far when it comes to relationship between environment and brain. There has been some research, and they focused mostly on amygdala. Why an amygdala? Amygdala is a part of the limbic system, which is one of the oldest evolutionary parts in our brain. And they are, so limbic system is responsible for emotion processing. And concretely, amygdala is related to fear. So when we perceive fearful faces, for example, or stress, it is very evolutionary important parts of our brain because of it we can survive, we can escape where there is a threat, etc. So since we know that we're more stressed in urban environments, we like research is mostly focused on amygdala. And in this seminal study by Lederbogen and colleagues, they show that there is a higher amygdala activity during stress in urban dwellers compared to rural dwellers. So they had participants to solve some mathematical tasks under pressure in a way so that they did it so they induced stress into participants. And they show that their right amygdala activity is higher in those who live in cities compared to those who live in rural environments. So this showed that somehow rural environment, nature, is more beneficial for amygdala than a city environment. On slide 8, you can see another study, but my supervisor Kuhn and colleagues. And this study showed that show higher structural amygdala integrity in citizens who live close to urban forests. So this study is so-called Berlin Aging Study, in which it was collected information about participants' addresses and about the features of neighborhood around like 2 kilometers around participants' addresses, and in older adults. And this was related with their integrity in different brain regions. And long story short, it was found that there was a correlation between forest, so presence of urban forest, and amygdala integrity. Again, hinting to benefit of nature for amygdala. However, these both studies are just cross-sectional in their nature, and we can't really infer the relationship of this effect. Like there is no causal relationship. So we can't really say if it's nature that is affecting brain in this case, right, or other way around. So for this reason, in my PhD, I wanted to focus on causal effects of nature and urban environment on brain. So on slide 9, you can see like my main research questions for this study, and there what are causal effects of urban and natural environments on brain. And also we were wondering if the beneficial effects of exposure to nature are due to beneficial effects of nature itself or due to absence of disadvantageous effects of the city. In other words, if when we go to a forest, do we feel well because of the forest itself or just because we are not in urban environment which is noisy, etc. So in order to examine these questions, we conducted an intervention fMRI study, so using magnetic resonance imaging and focusing on amygdala. And on slide 10, you can see what was our research design. So in the beginning of the study, participants fill out questionnaires about their stress and mood. And after that, they underwent fMRI tasks. Those tasks were fearful faces task and so-called Montreal imaging stress task or MIST. Within the fearful faces task, participants were just seeing a number of fearful and neutral faces. And we did so because we were focusing on amygdala, and this is like one of the best way to elicit amygdala because amygdala reacts to fearful faces. The other task, Montreal Imaging Stress Task or MIST, consisted of two conditions, experimental and control condition. An experimental condition, participants had to solve a number of arithmetic tasks under time pressure. And they will also, in this upper bar, they were receiving information that they're not so good as their peers, that they have to do it faster, etc. And we did this to induce them stress. And we might wonder why we wanted to induce stress. It's because according to stress reduction theory, people profit more from beneficial effects of nature when they're in a stressed state. And then we want them to actually be stressed before they go for a walk in nature. And in the control condition missed, it is the same. It is just that they didn't receive feedback about their peers, like how bad or good they are, and there was no time pressure, so they can take as much as time as they wanted. Then, after the task, participants went for a 1 hour walk, either to natural or to urban environment. So it was a between subject design, and they were randomized who will go to the nature and urban environment. And after the walk, they underwent the same fMRI procedure. So again, through both tasks, and finally they fill out questionnaires again about mood and stress and restorative. On slide 11, you can see what was our main hypothesis. So our main hypothesis is that amygdala activity after the walk in nature will decrease, and after the walk in urban environment, it will decrease, meaning that there is less stress in nature and more stress in urban environments, since amygdala is related to stress processing. On slide 11, I wanted to show you just where our walks took part. So this is a map of Berlin, one section map of Berlin. And the nature route was in Grunewald Forest. This is the largest green area in Berlin. This is just one part of it that you can see. And urban route was in Schlossstraße. This is a typical area for shopping with traffic, etc. And participants were brought from the institute that you can see as a pin on the map by taxi and left there. And they had to walk half an hour in one direction and then half an hour in opposite direction, and they will again picked up when they come to the beginning point. Then on slide 13, you can see our results. So I'd like first to show you the results from the Fearful Faces task. So in our participants, in our study, we had 63 participants, of which 29 women. And on the left-hand side, you can see fear condition, and right-hand side, neutral condition. So amygdala activity while watching fearful or neutral faces. And on y-axis, you can see amygdala activity during either of conditions, before and after the walk on x-axis. And amygdala activity in participants who went for a walk in urban environment was marked in gray bar, and in nature environment in green bar. So if you look to the fear condition, you can see for those participants who went for a walk in the urban environment, amygdala activity doesn't significantly change after the walk and in this urban street. However, amygdala activity after the walk in nature significantly decreases. And this is in line with our hypothesis, since we were expecting that amygdala activity will decrease after the walk in nature. And interestingly enough, when you look to the natural condition, we find practically the same results. And we think that this is so because just the threshold for amygdala activity was increased, meaning that it's more difficult for amygdala to get activated. And we think that we would get this effect regardless of a task in hand. And that's why we get it both for the fear condition and the neutral condition. Then on the next slide, those are the results for the Montreal imaging stress task. So this task with arithmetical tasks that had to solve. And we find, again, the same results. So interaction, significant interaction between urban and nature condition, showing that there was like a not significant, but descriptive decrease after the walk in nature, and then descriptive increase after the walk in urban environment. And I would also like to point out that this was just a 1 hour walk, and already after 1 hour walk, we can see this difference in brain. So it could be that after repeated walks in nature, amygdala activity for activation increases, right? And that's why it's more difficult for amygdala to get activated. And this would be in line with the study that I show in the beginning, showing that people who live in rural environments have lower amygdala activity during stress. So it might be that that's just they have this repeated exposure to rural environments in nature, and over time, just threshold for their amygdala increases, and it gets more difficult for amygdala to get activating, leading to lower amygdala activity during stress. So we are also offering that this could be one of the mechanisms why we see this effect in previous studies. I'd also like to show that when it comes to questionnaires, so for example, perceived restorativeness that participants fill out after the walk in nature, they report that they felt more restored after the walk in nature than those who went for a walk in urban environment, and they also reported that they enjoyed the walk more. And this is also in line with our brain data. That actually, this walk in nature was more beneficial for them than the urban walk. Okay, these were the results from this paper published in Molecular Psychiatry. But then we thought to kind of go a bit deeper into data. And then we published the other paper in Frontiers in Psychology, where we found when we split the sample to women and men, we found that this effect is present only in women. So if you see it, here it's shown a sample only for women, so 29 women. And this is amygdala on the epsilon axis, amygdala activity during fearful faces task. And we see the same effect. So practically amygdala activity decreasing after the walk in nature. However, in men, we don't find this effect. There is no change after the walk in urban environment or nature environment. And we have the same effect for the missed task. So we see the beneficial effect of nature and amygdala only for women, but nothing for men. And this is really interesting. Interesting results. I think we can talk later on. We're still not sure why is this the case. They hasn't really been explored previously. Generally, in the field of environmental psychology or neuroscience, there it's not the field wasn't really focused on inter-individual differences. So also with this study, we hope to somehow enhance the examining of inter-individual differences, starting with sex. There are some studies showing that for example, in kids, that the girls prefer nature more, and also with adults that women profit more from being nature or prefers being with nature, and also that women engage more in pro-environmental behaviors such as recycling, etc., than men. So it could be that there is some like sex differences in how people affect nature and how nature affect them. But this has been just not enough explored, very few studies. So we hope to explore this in future. And another interesting finding I wanted to show in slide 18 is that we found that the more connected are women to nature, so we gave them this questionnaire asking how connected do you feel to nature in general as a trait. So more they connected are, there is a higher change in amygdala activity on the missed task after urban walk. So somehow, if they, meaning that if they like nature more, the urban walk will impact their amygdala more. So it might be even more detrimental for them if they feel more connected to nature. Yes, we would like to encourage more looking to the sex difference and general inter-individual differences in this field. Um, Also talking about inter-individual differences, since we are also interested in it, we wanted to look to different age groups. So we were wondering um, when people actually start to feel these beneficial effects of nature, to start feel better in nature, etc. And in our second study, we had as a participants mothers and their infants. So on slide 19, you can see the research design for the second study. And it was similar to the first one, but in this case, we wanted to explore stress in mothers and their infants. First of all, because we were wondering, can infants already somehow intuitively feel when they're in nature urban environments? And can we measure that? So what we did is ask mothers if they can go for a walk, but instead of going to a priori defined route, we asked them if they can go for a walk where they normally go for a walk. So, for example, for a natural environment, we would ask them if you can go for a park which is close to your house, or to urban environment, for example, to street where you normally go for shopping and groceries, etc. So each mother went for a walk for both urban and natural walk, and this was normally around their home, so no more than 10 minutes walk to arrive to this environment, which is, we were really lucky because in Berlin there are really a lot of parks and it's possible to reach the park within 10 minutes. And they went for a walk with their infants, and we were measuring cortisol levels in both mothers and babies. Cortisol is a stress hormone. So in this case, instead of amygdala, it was proxy for stress. And mothers were collecting it from their own saliva, but they're also from infant saliva because we are interested to measure this in infants as well. They were until 1.5 years old. Um, and apart from the cortisol from saliva, they also were collecting breast milk. So we were measuring cortisol also from their breast milk. And this one I find especially interesting because we were wondering if we can see this effect of nature and environment in cortisol in breast milk. And if so, it might be that mothers transmit to their babies this effect through cortisol in breast milk. And first, we want to see if this is the case. And if this is the case, maybe we would have more studies and see if this can be even for intervention for mothers and babies for like more less stressful life and to enhance mental health of both mothers and babies. Um, so the design was similar. We managed to collect 71 mothers and infants over a course of 1 year, and they first did the questionnaires about their current mood and stress, and then they would collect cortisol from their saliva, baby saliva, and also from the breast milk. And then after that, they would go to either a nature walk or urban walk. And on the following day or a few weeks after, they would go to other walks. So the same person go to both walks. And after the walk, they will again fill out some questionnaires and again give cortisol on 3 more points in time, because we were wondering also how cortisol level decreases. If maybe if they go to nature, maybe this effect of nature will be longer in time, and we can see this on in the way how cortisol levels decrease. And again, here our hypothesis was that we will see a decrease in cortisol levels after the walk in nature, park, and increase in cortisol level after the walk in urban environment. However, as you can see in slide 20, we're still analyzing this data. We just finished with the study. So I hope that sometime in the beginning of next year, you can already read about this paper and what we found there. And yeah, those are two my main projects at the time. We also have a lot of other projects in the group and side projects I'm working on. So if you're interested, we can also talk about that. We really have a lot of projects. But this is what I mostly wanted to talk about. And my take home messages, as you can see in slide 21, would be that we found that amygdala activation decreases after nature exposure, whereas it remains the same after urban exposure. And we think this is really important because this is the first evidence of stress related neuroactivity as a causal effect of exposure to natural versus urban environment. As I mentioned earlier, studies did this as a cross sectional design. And we speculate the spending time in nature may buffer the disadvantageous impact of the city and serve as a preventive measure against developing mental disorder. And specifically, some mental disorder where amygdala is relevant, such as schizophrenia, since it has been shown that being brought up in urban environment really relates to developing schizophrenia at later age. Um, and as I mentioned, we advise future research to take into account inter-individual differences, such as participant sex and different age groups, when investigating the effect of urban and natural environments on stress and brain. And we do all this because we aim to, with our research, to influence urban design policies to create more accessible green areas in cities and adapt urban environments to improve citizens' mental health. So we really hope that our research will come to the urban design policymakers and that we will live in cities where nature would be accessible to everyone, regardless also of their socioeconomic status. And with this, I would like to end and thanks a lot for your attention. I left here my contact on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter or send me an email if you want to talk more about this or collaborate or have more questions. I'm really happy to discuss about this at any time. So yeah, thanks a lot, and I will be happy to take your questions.
Well, thank you so much, Sonia. This was a really interesting talk and really interesting results. And I know already that somebody wants to collaborate with you, Aya. Can connect the two of you.
Okay, that
After
would be
this,
great.
since now your email is there, maybe Aya, you can also reach out to Sonia. But and then I wanted, like, there are so many comments and thoughts I have. So uh, I don't want to take completely over, but I would maybe the male versus female is really interesting. The thing is that anxiety disorders are way more prevalent in females.
Mhm.
So my thought was that either maybe that the baseline activity for males is maybe in general less, so that the nature effect is probably beneficial but not measured as well in the amygdala, maybe more in aggression levels or things like that. Like, I don't know how to measure that right now, like I would have to think of about it, but maybe since anxiety disorders and so on are less prevalent in males, maybe that's why we don't see such an effect. And it's also more important to look at the female um part in this study, because there are way more females with anxiety disorders. That was one thing. And then the other thing is that for the future, for let's say designing, Berlin is really nice, and a lot of cities, and Germany and so on are really nice. They have a lot of forests in the cities where I grew up in Germany. We had the forest close by. But in cities where it's not possible anymore because they're already way too clustered, would be really interesting to know, like, can we create an essence of nature for people to be constantly exposed to it? Like, what are the main factors that would decrease stress levels in people? Is it the sounds, the smell, the color? Like, can we just, have some green walls mixed with some sounds and some smells for people, like a smell, sound, touch gardens, little ones in cities. So, yeah, are you planning on maybe studying that? Thank you.
So yeah, many thoughts, many points out there. Yeah, I agree. Also, what you said about females and anxiety. This is also something I was thinking about. That it could be that it's something that we couldn't measure, but it's actually the baseline is different. But we will definitely look more into depth this also in the future studies. There could be many things. We were also thinking that it might have been more scary for women to go to this Grunewald forest because somehow it's really isolated. But in the end, we didn't find this. But yeah, I guess there are definitely many factors in this exposure that could have played a role, and it was not easy to control for. And regarding your second question about the essence of nature, yeah, that's a $1 million question. What can we do? I mean, that there are, like, we already some people from urban design policies contact us and wanted to collaborate with us because there are also these people looking for scientists, but somehow we can't connect to each other. I think that one should really think of starting small, like this, what you're talking about would be amazing. But even, just thinking of creating parks that are closer to like, to people, or even just not destroying forests we already have. So we just wanted to show how this is important for mental health as well, not only for the environment and for our physical health, but also for mental health. It is true Germany has a lot of forests, but there are many cities, like in the, like, developed countries that don't have access to to nature environments. There are many cities that you can have a garden or so only if you're rich, but actually if you have a low economic status, you don't get to see nature at all. So I would at least try it with just a really kind of ensuring that people have even a tiny a portion of nature, such as urban park, within like 10 minutes of walk. Because it was also shown during COVID times, during lockdown, that people who had a park within the 2 kilometers of their home addresses show less anxiety and depression symptoms. So I think this one should start with that. And of course, like, there's so many of these biophilic designs that also our buildings or like offices can have more plants or greenery, or just like biophilic kind of like be curved. We had also another study we did in VR comparing curvature and angular design of the furniture. So I think there are a lot of small things that could be done in this direction. And here comes your question about what is it about? Is it about sounds or smell or color? This is something we really don't know, and this is something what we should we're planning to study in future studies, because for now we just wanted to explore really environment, like urban environment, nature environment as it is. But it is definitely a question: is it this because of the green and what's happening in nature, which is not green, or when is not green, like in winter and so on? And what are the features of nature that drive this effect? This is something that we also want to examine in the future. Yeah.
Hi, do you mind if I go, Katerina?
No, no, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for a really interesting talk. And related to some of the inter-individual factors that you were talking about, I was wondering if in your questionnaires you looked at sort of baseline levels of anxiety and whether you saw more, whether anxiety levels at baseline might have been a moderator for some of your results. And then two, in terms of isolating what might be the quote unquote active ingredient of the nature exposure, I was wondering if you've done or thinking about doing experiments in VR where you can sort of isolate different um, senses or sensations associated with the exposure to nature. Thanks.
When it comes to the anxiety, we didn't examine anxiety, but that's a good idea. I probably should have this in mind for the next study. Thanks for that. We did measure stress levels, but the problem with the questionnaires, I mean, if you kind of go to this slide where there was a design of our study, which was on slide 10. We couldn't really use the questionnaires from our like the data from our questionnaires, except from the one which I show about the restorativeness, because this is the only questionnaire that we gave only at post test, so after the walk. All other questionnaires we give before and after, and we realized we couldn't use them because when participants came back from the walk, they first underwent the fMRI tasks and then the questionnaires. Right. And then while they were in, like, when they were filling out the questionnaires, all of these questions started, how did you feel in the last hour? And we actually was referring to the hour when they were in nature, but since we gave this after the scanner, we were actually asking them, how were you feeling in the scanner when they were under stress? So they were all at the end felt like more stressed and so on, because we didn't really measure the effect of the walk, but rather the effect of the stress procedure after the walk. But we kind of had to do this because we had to balance if we want to focus on neuromeasure or questionnaire measures, and we want to focus on neuromeasures. So we also didn't know we were gonna, like find this effect if we give it after the questionnaires. So everything that we measure in the questions we really couldn't use. So probably we will solve this next time, just maybe giving them short questionnaires as soon as they come back. But yeah, stress and anxiety, also coming back to this sex differences story, was something we would definitely measure. And when it comes to VR, yeah, that's an amazing idea, because in VR you can really control everything that you can't in real life while still having environment. We did one, as I mentioned, this experiment in VR with the interiors, so like with furnitures. We want to do also one with urban and natural environment, and we actually had an idea to use the same route, and we were taking photos of the route where they went for the walk in this study, and to do this in VR to kind of see if there is any difference of, if the effect is the same. Maybe people just can do this in VR, for example, for people who can't really go to nature or can't walk for any reason. So yeah, this is definitely something where we will go, and in this case then we could really kind of disentangle if it's because of color, is it because of smell. I guess this would a way to do this would be in VR, really.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle, Eric, Nerdist, Dr. Rao, and Joyce. Please go ahead in PTR order. Thank you.
Forgive me if I'm not audible. I am in the forest and reception is very minimal,
Nice.
or the service is not very strong. But the qualia is amazing, and so the what it's like. I was wondering, did you look into that? The individual subjective experience of being in nature and how that impacts the brain. Is there a I was thinking that there's a subjectivity aspect to being in nature. A lot of people feel a sense of awe and connectedness to life, and whereas others will just trudge through the forest on a path and complain about being stuck in nature away from modern day society. So I was wondering about the qualia, and then also I mentioned Katerina that I'll send you an email. I know a landscape architect from Harvard, and also some urban designers and landscape architects. And um, your work should be definitely highlighted and in the minds of those people while they're making their designs. So I just wanted to say thank you and amazing presentation and just curious about the qualia aspect.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your question. And nice that you're already in nature. That's nice. I hope it's a bit at least influenced by this. Yeah, that's a really good question about the qualia. So, yeah, there are definitely differences on this. We had this one questionnaire asking people how much they're connected to nature. There is a connectedness to nature scale in different versions. There is one with just I think 12 items. There is one with circles when they're like one circle is nature, one circle is person. So depending how overlap, you have to see, you kind of have to overlap them to illustrate your connectedness to nature. Um, we examined this, but we didn't really find any differences. Yeah, in relation to brain study, there is this one thing that I show on the slide 18, that we saw that people who are more connected, like women who are more connected to nature, had a higher amygdala activity on the myths after urban walks. So somehow saying that it was more detrimental for them to spend some time in urban if they're more connected to nature. And we can see this only women, which is really interesting. And it's also true, not in my sample, but it has been shown that somehow women are also more connected to nature. Maybe that's the reason why also there is this difference. But yeah, I think this subjective experience is very important. I wish there was another way to measure it, which is kind of more in detail than this question. We did ask them though after the walks, like to say, call it like with their own words, what was their experience, and we find really some, yeah, people who really enjoyed it. But yeah, this would be the way to measure this with this connectedness to nature, I guess, for the moment in the field. And talking about this possible collaboration, yeah, that would be great. Just send them to me, and then I hope we can kind of think of working together, because I'm really happy also that this study really resonated with people, because I think it's really important to get this message through of how important is this, not only for like psychological health, but also for like our brain. Yeah, nature. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you for the question, and I hope the collaboration works out. Nardish, did you have a question?
No, I'm in the office now.
Okay.
I posted in chat.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Dr. Rao, do you have a question?
I don't have a question at this time, but I want to share something very relevant with my work and with what you guys are talking about. First of all, I'm very happy I'm in this room, and I'm going to give a brief explanation of what my experience with this qualia we are talking about. Uh, I'm an internist by medical profession, but I also looked into ancient wisdom, several systems, yoga, Ayurveda, and non-duality. So many systems of ancients, the thought patterns and all that. What was very impressive for me was they kind of considered they're part of the nature. That's one thing. And some of the insights I apply in my uh, burnout coaching is forest bathing, when I really draw people from this data intensive hospital environment to nature, right? I don't know about the virtual reality, how it's going to work. I hope it will work. But I do simple things like a flower by the side of the computer, or a plant, or things like that, something natural, right? But I usually bring them out to go out and just wander around if you don't have any Most of our cities are concrete jungles, so they may not have, but sometimes we have roof gardens where they want to minimize the heat. That's why in Chicago rooftops, a lot of gardens are there. They can go and wander around them too. But what I teach them is how do you wander around? What do you do with your mind at the time? How do you deal with your sensory perception? Do you involve completely or do you separate from that? There is a technique called pratyahara in yoga where you withdraw whatever the food that is coming from your sensory exposure. Food means seeing the sights, hearing the noises, all those things are also considered food for our mind. So how do you deal with that? There is a technique taught where you go, you basically you establish yourself in the natural silence that is there within us. Towards that, first you go and enjoy the nature, just be with it, and then don't ask too many questions or don't wander away from that moment to your own thought world, either memory or imagination. That training, that shutting it off for a while, really seems to make a difference for a lot of people who are exposed to a lot of data, getting it to go completely from the morning till evening. And one of the practice I teach in my wellness club in the morning is try to be here and now in the present. Throughout the hour, whatever exercise we do, whatever breathing we do, the ultimate aim is try to be here and now. So I want them to take that presence as a perfume through the day. That really helps them to be in the present and deal with the things so that you won't accumulate all this brain fog, we call it, right? So there are so many other ways I employ this phenomena, whereas we are looking at the molecular biology and the soup we make with the negative thought and all whatever thoughts we dig it up. The ancients had insights about perception and the mind and the quality experience in a authentic their own experiential knowledge. It's not written down, it's experiential knowledge. So Katrina, I would love to collaborate with you on this. I'm very happy I'm here. I don't want to take too much time. There's so much I can talk about this. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for your comment. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much to it. I really agree that this is important. What you're talking about, this here and now kind of experience, subjective experience, and this is also important in the nature, and this is difficult to kind of control in studies. So, like for example, we really wanted people who were going to nature to feel to really be there, and we were not sure if this is really going to happen, if they're going to pay attention. So one of the reasons to overcome is this, that we took their mobile phones. So we told them that, so we they left the mobile phones at the lab, because we were wondering what if they just walk and actually someone calls them, or they're like, messaging and so on. So we really hope that they were in the environment, but this is really impossible to control for. And this is another question, if this is how people normally behave, right? If you go to a park, probably there are people who are just really enjoying and being there, but probably there are also other people who thinking on other things. So yeah, this would be interesting also to ask how much you were paying attention to the environment, and then and correlating maybe this with the measures, with the dependent variables in brain measure and so on. And I also like what you said about the patients, because actually this research about urban versus nature was motivated by a very early study in 1991 by Ulrich, which was who started with this stress reduction theory, who actually noticed that patients who look to a concrete wall, like with bricks, compared to those who look to a garden, needed more time to recover and to go out from the hospital. So from this part of these rooms, from these people who were just looking to another wall, needed more time to go out from the hospital. And that's why he started this research of kind of exposing patients to nature in order for them to recover faster. So I think also in this context of like of like a clinical psychology, people who have certain diagnoses, it might be even more beneficial to go to spend some time in nature.
Wow, that's really interesting. What you mentioned with the recovery time. That would really probably motivate people to design hospitals differently.
Yeah.
Here in the US, it's so costly, like for both sides, for hospitals and for insurances, and so to keep people longer in the hospital. So I think there would be a huge initiative to have maybe at least, like, if it's not possible, anything else, to have like a green wall and some nature sounds or something. That
Yeah.
that would be interesting. And
I,
the 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 solving, if people pay attention. So I did that with myself when I had a lot of stress a bunch of years ago. I had a very stressful job and, small kids and everything together. Um, I made myself take pictures while I was walking in nature every day to kind of pay attention. And I felt like this helped me more to, like, instead of just thinking about work and all the problems while I was walking. So I don't know if that's something. And then interestingly, a few months later, when I started doing that, there was on NPR a show, like the National Public Radio here in the US, where an artist did that, like, more famously, and then I had the exhibition about that, and started a whole, like, movement on Instagram or so, like, for mental health, to, like, take beautiful pictures. I'm not sure if she did it just with nature, but in general, to, like, be mindful in the moment. So yeah, maybe that would be a thing to do. That they should take some pictures while they walk. Maybe not with the phone, maybe with a camera or something.
yeah, that was actually one of the like first ideas we wanted to do, because we based this on a previous study who did something similar but related to rumination. So they were looking to neural correlates of rumination in participants with depression. And they were taking photos because they also wanted to see what draw their attention, if they walk the correct route and so on. But then we thought, but if you kind of give this stuff to people, they're different people, they might be, trying to make as beautiful photo as possible, and or something like that, and not really like just enjoying like being there. But yeah, that might be one way of, like, everyday practice for people to really kind of motivate them to go out for to walk. I think this was one of the motivation for me during lockdown. I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy cameras, so maybe it makes me go outside a bit and really pay attention to this yeah, beautiful parts of nature. But related to what you were saying about hospital, this is definitely, yeah, one way. And we're currently also conducting a study with a clinic in Hamburg where my supervisor works, where we also want to see if when that is work of colleague of mine, when like walls are decorated with the nature posters or like with plants, if the, for example, patient who has schizophrenia have a decrease in symptoms. So this is something that, yeah, is being done, and hopefully soon we would know results, and kind of this can also be motivation for like yeah, making hospitals more greener.
Yeah, I would also be really interested in schools, because in kids, anxiety levels and mental health disorders are increasing in the US, I think by a concerning rate of like 400% increase in the
Okay.
last couple of years. Like, it's crazy, especially in the preteens, like tweens, like 12-year-olds and so on. And also suicide rates are increasing, like, in crazy ways. So would be really interesting if, for example, a study, kids that in recess would be in a garden, like plant something,
Mhm.
instead of just playing on the concrete floor, or
Yeah,
somehow
there is.
something like that, if that would help maybe kids.
Yeah, there is something there, like in some countries already. This is called forest pedagogy. So there is already like trying to kids from very early age and connect more with nature, also for their mental health and lowering anxiety, but also in terms of preserving forests and preserving environment. And just the thing is, we are so disconnected from nature. I think future generations should kind of try to connect more, and both for for environment and their own for themselves. And yeah, there is the whole this in Scandinavia, for example, when their schools are really happening outside, and when they learn about the world in practical terms. If they have to do something in maths, they can actually count trees, I don't know, but like they're really interacting from the very early age. And we know that those are like the most successful educational systems in the world. So I think that there's something, yeah, definitely that should be changed. It's somehow more natural environments for kids to just be in a park or in nature than like closed in this environment. And I think it's even necessary. Um, but yeah, I think this is definitely a way to go, and it's decreasing and it's increasing this trend of including nature and with this forest pedagogy in schools.
Yeah, Joyce, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. This is a very interesting topic. Um, I had two lines of thinking, and one was that years ago I had a spell where I had a lot of anxiety and stress feeling, and it was from a spell during my chronic fatigue syndrome, very long term severe problems that I had, um, and and I found that music had a deeper effect on me, relaxing. And then I saw this study that compared like having a painting versus having like soothing music, and the music seemed more powerful. I can't seem to find the study, but I put a more recent overview of the whole topic. And so I was thinking, I wondered if nature sounds might even be more powerful than a visual, and it might depend on the circumstances. Then my other thought was, I wondered about the role of changes in allergen and microbiome exposure that relate to it that might affect stress. Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, yeah, this is really nice point with the music. The music definitely changes our mood. Maybe the fastest thing to change our mood. When it comes to the to like sound from nature, this is also another line of research in our lab, where my colleague Emil Stabe, he is mostly working sounds, nature sounds. And for example, his study just has come out like 3 or 4 days ago, where he also did it in the scanner, and he was playing birds sound, different variety of birds to people, and it resulted that it decreased like a paranoid state and depression and anxiety symptoms, like not in patients, in health controls, but still some of the symptoms were like decreased after listening to birds. And yeah, he's also now analyzing this, what is happening on the brain level. But it looks that there is also benefit just when we isolate the sound. So definitely the next step would be going into these details about just isolating sounds, or what you mentioned about like this micro organisms or odors, color. So yeah, that we can somehow tweak this and experiment, and then see what is actually driving this effect. um, yeah, we also had another study but we're still now analyzing the data, where we were playing pink noise. So this like sound that, yeah, like, when the old TVs were broken. And some people say this is relaxing for them. And it's the same sound, but once we said it's like waterfall, and the other times we said it's like a machinery in an industry. and then we want to see what's happening in the brain, if it's possible for brain somehow to, if there is a difference when you're expecting certain sound, even though the sound is completely the same, and what happens in the brain in the restoration. So this is another study that we had. So yeah, I think it's really interesting to kind of disentangle all of these features and see which of them are the most important for mental health.
That's really interesting. So, like white noise can seem like a waterfall or water running or something.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, there
exciting.
was one study like they did this with EEG, with electroencephalogram, and also just asking people how do they feel. And in both study, they found they found the signal in EEG and the people saying that they feel better, corresponding to the nature kind of source. So there was this attribution of the source that you can see the data, even though the sound was exactly the same. So this was already kind of proven on behavioral data and EEG signals. So we wanted to see if we can see the same with the fMRI. Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I think I had a kind of a sound generator thing at one point where you could choose like a waterfall and of course I'm sure they generated them. Well, some of them they generated through, certainly weren't recordings. Other parts they did use recordings, but anyway, it's really
Hmm.
interesting. Thanks.
Yeah, hopefully this will be sometime soon ready so you can read about it. A lot of things to do.
Can I ask another question?
Yeah, sure.
Going back to the idea of inter-individual factors that may impact this, I was wondering if I know you talked about connectedness to nature, but I was wondering about sort of people who've grown up in more natural environments versus people who've grown up in more urban environments. Because as you were talking, I'm automatically going to the therapeutic potentials, and I'm a psychiatrist in Chicago, which is a very urban environment, but there are a lot of parks every couple blocks, so it's a bit of a mix. But I'm just wondering about the factors related to what kinds of environments you grew up in and how that might impact the sort of therapeutic potential of exposure to nature.
Yeah, that is a great question and something that has been studied. So because this is definitely probably even more important to asking where do you live now. Well, it's like where were you brought up, and also in this study that I mentioned in the beginning, they actually introduced this urbanicity score, which is kind of calculating how many years you spent up to age of 15 in like rural environment, urban environment, and like a town, what they define as a town. And then they relate this with activity, and they actually find a correlation also in one like stress area. We did this analysis as well, but we didn't find anything. And this is probably, I mean, maybe there isn't anything, but it might be also because most of our participants were really from Berlin and raised in Berlin. So I think we didn't have enough of variety. So people coming from rural environments to really kind of examine this. Um, but I think it's something we should look into every time we conduct a study, and we also always ask these questions in order to calculate this urbanicity score. It's just that we normally our participants are from Berlin, but it has been shown in previous study this also impacts as well. Where you grown up.
Great, thank you. I'm glad that you you looked at it, and it makes perfect sense that if you have most of your participant pool from the same area, that it won't really impact your results that much. But it's very interesting thinking about the generalizability of this and thinking about the clinical applications.
Yes, that is very important because we conducted this experiment with younger adults, mostly students. So, the question of generalizability, it's definitely there. We are also did an online studies, like for example in UK. where we pre-screened people based on their postcodes, so that we can have a more of a difference of like where people live, rural and urban environment. When we were doing a study with like we kind of want to show that depending on where they live and how urban is that region, they're actually perceiving style is different. There is this global and local style. So my point is we can also use this kind of different postcodes in future to kind of pre-screen people and to account for more variety. But when it comes to the scanning, yeah, it's just that the scanner is in Berlin, and when we do this intervention studies, that is probably the reason. But I hope to have more variety in future, that we can also look to people who comes from rural environments.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know we've been going for almost an hour and a half. You probably didn't plan for so long, but the discussion is so interesting. Oh, and Dr. Ernest and Rebecca have a question. I don't know if you still have time.
Sure. I did plan, so
Okay.
it's completely fine. As soon as people are interesting, I'm happy to talk about it.
Oh, hey, listen, thank you. I had my first of all, you're in the beginning of your journey and career. I admire what you're doing. That you're using good science models, and I love the biological endpoints that you're including, rather than just depending on self-reports. Um,
Mhm.
another point that I want to make before my question was. This going out, stay out in the field, stay out in nature. These virtual things, we don't know what impact that stuff is going to do on us. Stay out in nature and that kind of thing. Teach with Mother Nature. Be out there. My question really was, I mean, walking. I mean, I'm a walker. I'm an OG. I'm an old healthy guy, 68, former professor, all that kind of good stuff. Have been where you are in the lab, contemplating, what to do in the lab as opposed in nature. My endpoints were blood pressure, and heart rate and measures of that. We tampered with cortisol, with urine, that kind of thing. But, um, it, walking by itself, regardless of where the walk is, around a track, on a treadmill in the office, regardless of what's around it, walking itself has a pretty profound impact on the biology, okay, and the chemistry,
Yeah.
on cortisol and other hormones as well, okay. Probably, I haven't looked in a long time, but I would imagine some of my buddies, former colleagues over there at Duke University, who were into looking at the impact of walking, probably have looked at brain neuroimaging. Okay, so
Mm.
my issue with you here is that I want you to hear is dismantle that part of things. There are people who are walking, and then there are people who can be in nature. Now, I'm sitting in my home office, surrounded by windows, okay? And I'm looking out at nature at this moment, okay? And one window I can overlook and see my organic garden out there, okay? So I'm essentially in nature at this moment. Now, I've already had a walk outside this morning, okay?
Mhm.
Um, but it was a walk. And when I go into nature, I am away from all of this. It's not about walking. I might travel to get there. I'm not going to walk to get deep into the mountains and where I've got the stream and the waterfall. And I'm not going to do too much walking when I get there. I'm just going to sit and bask and enjoy the
Mm.
bliss of, you know what I mean? What nature gives
Mm.
me. Okay. And I know biologically for me, just coincidentally, because I've got all these monitors on me for heart rate and blood pressure and these other little things,
Mm.
you know what I mean? When I'm there in just nature doing nothing but just being nature, not even contemplating, not even doing a mantra, not even doing a meditation, not even really doing anything
I'm
except
sorry to
taking it.
interrupt, but did you listen to the presentation or look at the paper or the
Yes,
presentation?
yes,
Because there
yes.
is the comparison between walking in urban areas for exactly the same time and
Well, it's
walking
not.
in
It's
nature
not.
for exactly the
It,
same time, and then looking at the amygdala activity. So
yeah,
if you
that's
have a question, please go ahead and ask Sonia a
yeah.
question. Thank you.
But you know, walking by itself is by
Yeah, but that
itself.
would be
So
controlled in walking in
being in
urban areas, right? That's a control
y-
measurement because people are walking in urban areas and people are walking in nature. So you have a control for that. So thank you.
well, being in nature by itself has an impact. And so my question was, you know, have you looked at just the impact of being just in nature?
Yeah,
Period.
without walking, you mean?
Yeah, yeah, because walking is a confounder, you know,
Yeah.
because it has an effect, it has a main effect by itself, which wasn't measured here. So
Well,
being
it
in,
was because you measure it in urban areas and it has a different effect on the amygdala versus if you walk in nature, at least in females. So you
well,
have a different effect there.
but that's your interpretation. But being in nature is different than just walking, you know. So my
Yeah,
question
yeah.
is, yeah,
Yeah, I get what you mean. So you mean like what we found is the same thing if people were just sitting. They don't have necessarily to walk, sort of. I mean, what Katarina says is true. So both of them, like both conditions, are walking. So we are kind of assuming that it's the same for everyone, and we're just looking to the fact of what is different, and that's environment, right? But it is true that it's not a crucial thing, I think, to the study, because there has been studies who just had people sitting, for example, and they report that there is an effect. And these physiological indicators of stress, such as blood pressure and electrodermal activity, after 15 minutes, even that's what they're reporting. So I think it's more the point of being in nature, not necessarily walking. We went for walking because we just thought that it's kind of more interesting to be there while walking, like for 1 hour and so on. And it could be that, yeah, for some people who really likes nature, they can be for a long time in it, like just sitting, but it might be boring after, I don't know, like 1 hour or something like that. So then that's why we went for walking. But I think this is not really crucial. I think that just being in nature, many studies have shown this, it's already kind of impacting mood, or just walking, looking the nature pictures or being in VR, it's already kind of has an effect on mood and like also physiological indicators. So it's rather more nature than what do you do in nature, I would say. Yeah.
okay. Thank you for entertaining the question. Peace.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, Rebecca left. I don't know, Rebecca, do you still want to ask your question or you moved yourself back to. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Hey.
Hi. So I wonder, I'm not a scientist, so I won't be able to say this in scientific words, but I wonder if in nature, excuse me, hold on one second, there are fewer competing wavelengths. So for instance, if you're in the city, you, I have no idea if this makes sense because I don't know, but
No worries.
maybe you can help me with this. In the city, you have car sounds. Then you have the beeping of a large truck as it backs up. You have the wavelengths of dogs barking, of people walking, of lights turning, the lights that are on. And in nature, I would assume there's less sensory input and maybe fewer types of wavelengths. So I'm Rebecca. That's my question. I'm done speaking.
Yeah, that's really great question, and the answer is we don't know. So the thing is that this is something, why we think that this is happening. So right, because the social stress, how they call it, is thought to be a reason why there is more stress in urban compared to natural environment. It's definitely more complex, more stimuli. You have to, as you said, like see if you're gonna be hit by a car or to cross the street and so on. So it's more stressful. But however, as I showed in this figure, we don't find an like additional increase on the existing baseline in the urban environment, but we find a decrease in nature. So that's why we argue that it's rather something of nature being more excuse me, relaxing than urban being more stressful. At least what we see in amygdala. But this is definitely the one of the major differences between these two environments. Just one being really calm and with less threatening stimuli comparing to other one. And this is probably one of the ways to look at it. It's just that we don't know what is exactly the reason that it's driving the effect. But probably the urban environments, as I mentioned in the beginning, there people have a more mood and anxiety disorders in this environment. This is probably related to as well to the social stress and just the fact that the urban environments are more complex and more intense environments than rural, for example.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's affecting the sensory system. If you've seen, I have to go in a minute, but have you seen a rainbow colored chart that I think you can find at the Star Institute on their website? I know you can. That starts with the sensory, it's a triangle, and at the very bottom of the triangle are different sensory systems. I'm trying to see it on the computer, like interoception, how we feel in our body, vestibular, our sense of balance, proprioception, knowing where we are in space, and then the problems that can happen as you go up that triangle, which ends in joie de vivre. So until you can't have, it's harder to have joie de vivre if you have sensory problems. And so I wonder if and then there's an accompanying chart. Hold on, I just have to find it 1 second. There's an arousal curve that and I can send this to you if you want. There's an arousal curve that says it's a bell-shaped curve, and if we're on the low end of the curve, what kind of, hold on, I'm going to open this up. Arousal regulation signs by Sarah Norris, Norrisms. And it shows what kind of mind, body, and behavioral states we can have when we're in low arousal, like sad. Our mind could be sad or bored or low energy. And then it goes up to optimal arousal, high arousal, and hyperarousal. And hyperarousal, we could be overwhelmed, our body, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It describes the mind, body, and behavioral states if we're not in optimal arousal. So I'm wondering if what nature provides is less input on our sensory system. And therefore we're more likely to be in optimal arousal. Now, I wouldn't know the difference between, I don't know the difference, how that would explain why the difference between men and women, but this is just a thread to possibly pursue.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I don't know, but I would agree with this because that's also something what we are kind of arguing with this change of amygdala threshold. We just think that, yeah, something like that, that in nature, the arousal is actually lower. And this is somehow very easily saying calming amygdala, and that's why when they come from the nature and they do same task, the amygdala activity is lower because its threshold changed. It's just more difficult to get activated. So I think this is definitely something to do with low arousal of being in nature, and that's why this amygdala activity gets lower. Yeah, I think it's definitely because even if we extract and like take out many differences from environment and urban and nature environment, one of the things that stay, like a color and whatever, there is still difference between high and low arousal. So I think this is definitely has something to do with this difference in the amygdala activation after the walk.
Yeah, and if you're interested in this, Lucy Miller, um, she's written a lot about this, research papers, etc. So that might also be something to explore.
Okay, thanks a lot. I'll have a look.
I had a quick question that came up from this last discussion, and that is that, well, that autoimmune diseases are more common in women. And actually, the
Mhm.
most recent research is showing that there's actually more allergies among people with autoimmune conditions. And it just makes me wonder about the difference between male and female and the immune activation and the exposures to allergens and microbes. Anyway, just a thought.
Mhm. Yeah, okay. I can also look into this. Whatever there is a difference in sex, what kind of to help me understand this difference and also the difference in arousal. I guess that this out difference in out. I don't know this research, but I could imagine this higher level of autoimmune diseases are also related to higher anxiety in women as well.
Well, I know that there are studies indicating, there's HRV and there's sleep associations with autoimmune diseases. But I also should let you know, too, that there are, you might look up this article, it was in Nature called Allergic Host Defenses, and the author's Palm et al. It was a number of years ago, and they cited some studies, and I think there's some additional ones, too, that I found that showed when they had like rats in a cage that had been sensitized to allergens, if they put a trace amount of that allergen in the cage, the rat or the mouse exhibited anxiety, and it showed up in the CRH levels in the brain. And so that it's something that hasn't been studied adequately, but um, and actually, I also found a study at the time that indicated that there were relationships between higher levels of allergy, like seasonally, and exacerbations of mental illnesses that are known to be stress related, as most mental illnesses are. So I think there was a bipolar one or something. Anyway, maybe I could send you the references perhaps. Anyway,
Yeah,
thanks.
that would be nice. I would like to have a look at that as well. Yeah, because yeah, this is still related to the environment, the allergens, and this is interesting finding. Yeah, that would be nice. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Yeah. So thank you so much for all these interesting questions and this very interesting discussion. Sonia, thank you for sharing this research with us and for doing this research. I think it's really important to do this systematically. We kind of had like intuitive data, like thinking that nature is good for us, but I always think it's really good to do this in this scientific, rational way, to kind of convince people that, do this, money versus what is worth it balance. I think they need this type of data and research to be convinced. So thank you for
Yeah,
doing that. And yeah, I hope you get a lot of funding, a lot of collaborations, that a lot of people listen to you and your colleagues. And whatever I can do for it, let me know. I don't think I can do much, but um, yeah, I can offer at least. I also have a company now that we have a mental health tool, like a diagnosis tool, a new one. I can offer you to, if you have language data, to just screen for you, maybe the language
Mhm.
data. yeah, that would be my way probably to support if there would be ever a need for it. And yeah, I wish you all the luck, all the funding, and yeah, come back when you have updates on the ongoing project. They sound so wonderful, and I hope you enjoyed the time here. Thank you.
Yeah, I enjoyed a lot. It's really nice to kind of have these discussions, and thanks a lot for your interest in the field in general, and like mental health and environment, environmental neuroscience. So yeah, thanks a lot for reminding me. I'm really had a great time and just discussing, and thanks for many great ideas. I wrote them down, and I definitely look some to it in like future studies. Yeah, thanks a lot. And yeah, I might come back when I have maybe results from my second study or something like that. But
Yeah,
yeah, thanks a lot for the invitation.
yeah, and just to explain a little bit why I was a little bit rougher on one question earlier is, there are a lot of studies showing that when women present research, they get more questions if the project made any sense at all instead of detailed question. And that was kind of a question like that, like, why even do this? I spent in the garden, and it kind of personally by now irritates me a little bit. So that's why I jumped in for support. Maybe you probably didn't need it, but I just wanted to explain why. Because women get way more questions like this, like, does it even make sense what you're doing? Basic questions. And so yeah. Anyways, so I wish you all the best. I think it's wonderful that you're in a group where women get, the leading positions. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening. I know it's probably getting late in Germany. And happy holidays. And I'll maybe contact you again next year. So thank you.
Thanks a lot for the invitation. And yeah, after this long session, have a walk. I'm gonna have a
Yeah,
walk outside.
that's one.
Okay,
Okay. Bye, Sonia.
thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you like discussions like this, join the club. We have tomorrow Dr. Tarduno coming, who will talk about the origin of the inner core structure of the Earth. And then next week we have an astrobiology room where Dr. Krishnamurti discovered new data that about adding on to the theory of origins of life. And Dr. Fredkin will come next Wednesday. It's a little bit related to the talk today, a new method to control unwanted thoughts that he's working on. And then Dr. Lana will talk about intracellular transfer of telomeres in T cells, which is really interesting. T cells are very important nowadays for treatment and so on. So this will be a really interesting talk. And multi-level development of cognition in AI with Dr. Dumas. And Dr. Frank will talk about his theory about intelligence as a planetary scale process, which is also will be a really interesting talk and I think discussion. So thank you so much. And yeah, I'll close the room in 3, 2, 1. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Go for a walk,
Bye.
everyone, in nature if you can. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.